Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Digitally Diverse, where we do a deep dive into the careers and journeys of the influential tech and design leaders. Today, we are joined by the lovely Banaz Irani, who is the product design manager at OpenTable. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I guess I would love to start with hearing a little bit of an overview of like where you've come from and your journey so far, just in case listeners don't know who you are.
Sure. So where did I start? I feel like I've always been designing for ever since I was young. Back in the days when, do you remember like DeviantArt and like making digital art?
The
That was like a
OGs.
thing. Yeah. So I wasn't really like playing in the playground or doing much sport, but I loved, creating digital art using Photoshop. And creating like album covers. Like that was the thing that I really liked.
Love that.
And then, I come from like an Indian Iranian household where it's really common to, pick the classic like engineering, law, med background. But, something was calling me into the creative type. So I went to school and studied communications design and business, thinking to go into the route of advertising because, I'm from Melbourne. That's really big here. And that's still such a creative space. But then I just flipped. I did a study abroad semester in San Francisco throughout uni for like 6 months. And that just opened my eyes to the whole wonderful, wacky world of tech and Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was it. From that on, I came back to Melbourne after my semester abroad, reached out to so many people. I wanted to like change my whole career, right? And so I was like reaching out for internships, asking questions like, what is UX? How can I do UX?
Mm-hmm.
UX wasn't really a thing-ish back then. It was like just becoming a thing. So I was just making stuff up kind of in my portfolio or like tweaking internships to do that. But got there in the end, moved back to San Francisco after I finished university. I just loved it so much. San Francisco is great. Like it's just like there's a lot of unique people with a lot of big ideas. And, I was like 22, I think. Yeah, 22, 23. So like it was just a really great time for learning about myself, learning about UX.
Mm-hmm.
I then joined a UX consultancy job straight out of school. And because I didn't study UX, that was like my place to figure out the foundations of what design is. That was really brutal and tough. I loved it, but
chucked in the deep end.
It was thrown in the deep end. Yeah. If anyone knows working for an agency and then also learning what UX is at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot. But I'm really grateful for that experience because that then I guess put me where I am today. I moved in-house with OpenTable and I've been at OpenTable for nearly 6 years, which
is an age for a lot of designers and for a lot of people in tech.
Yes, exactly. But I swear like it's wild. Like I can't believe it's already been 6 years. I've grown so much in the company. I love the company. I love the people there. And throughout that time, I moved into management. I think it's been nearly 2.5 years, 3 years in management now.
Nice.
It just goes so fast.
Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. Oh, that's great. Well, I mean, for people who aren't familiar with OpenTable and like what you do there, can you give us a brief overview?
Yeah. So most people, and it's really common, most people think that OpenTable, if you do know OpenTable, is just a classic like reservations. Like as a diner, I can book a reservation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was always what I knew. But then when I started at OpenTable, there's a completely massive other side, and that's really helping our restaurants. So though you see like diners can book a reservation, but what we actually provide to restaurants is a lot of different software to help them run like really smooth operations.
Mm-hmm.
So most of our teams are really working on like really complex B2B enterprise problems to really help restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And so my role at OpenTable, I manage the core line of business, which is table management, software, and reservations. So we're just thinking about like, how can we make restaurants have like smooth operations when you're in service, like who's standing, who's making sure people are coming in, how many people are like sitting at the table at certain different amounts of time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm just like skimming the surface. The amount of complex problems that restaurants have to solve for, it's really hard. And I feel for restaurants today, we're constantly thinking about like, with COVID, that really, really changed dining behaviors.
Definitely.
Right? Like I love eating out. I was not eating out anymore. And so that was massive for them. Like not only have they dealt with like new dining behaviors, but what now restaurants are facing are the like after effects of that, which is like high food costs, staff shortages, and just in general inflation. And so these are the things that like as a company we're thinking about. And I think it's just such an exciting, interesting time. It always is to solve for like food tech, and especially because it's something that like I love. Like I don't cook as much, but I eat out for everyone.
I guess, yeah, you're right. Like the times where people or companies are thrust into like a really weird, unexplainable, unpredictable time is when a lot of that really gritty problem solving has to happen in the moment. And I guess because OpenTable is an international brand as well, do you just cover like the Australian arm, or are you also working on projects that are like global? How does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so OpenTable, we treat ourselves as a global company,
Mm-hmm.
and so all of our products and our features are like, we always think about different locales. We are primarily based in the US. A majority of our customers are there. Our headquarters are there. I actually started out in San Francisco with them, and then came back to Australia after COVID. And not only did I move back to Australia, but a whole team dispersed
Right.
around America, but also like globally as well. I did the big move. I jumped from America to Australia, but like a lot of people just went from San Francisco and they moved throughout. So this whole new world has changed how the way we work. But we still, as a team and as a company, we are constantly thinking about all our different locations. So our team, like I manage a few designers in Australia, but a lot of my designers that I manage are in the US and Canada. And so though we're spread out, we're super tight knit. We're based in Australia, US, London, Canada. I mean, I think that's just like a little bit, but we think of us as a global team.
Love that. All the time zones. That must be fun.
Yeah, I'm tired. No.
So, what would you like to tell the audience about the culture at OpenTable? It sounds like you guys are really collaborative, considering that you're working across the globe. So, anything that like jumps out to you?
Yeah. So apart from us, being spread across the world, but being tight knit, I think one of the things that reason why I've been at OpenTable for so long is just like we're so passionate about food and restaurants. And at the end of the day, I think that a lot of us are just like foodies. Like we're just like food obsessed people. And the people that love food, we have that like-minded interests. But I also feel like in a world where, we're around a lot of tech, and especially OpenTable headquarters are in San Francisco. In my time, I've met a lot of like techie people, but I really just found the people at OpenTable just so freaking humble. Like no egos. We're kind of like a family. The company isn't a medium size, so we're not really large that we get extremely corporate, but we're not small that like there are some people there like that can like lead us and that are really inspiring as well. So if I had to summarize it, I just find we're very humble, like-minded people.
I love that. And you're so right. When a company does grow quite quickly, or it does get to that really big size where you feel like you're just, a cog in a machine, sometimes you do miss that touch. And something like in an industry such as hospitality, you really do need that like person to person vibe still. So no,
Yes.
that sounds great. I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about your university experience. You mentioned that you went to uni. What was the thought process behind going into the degree that you did?
Well, first of all, there was no the thought process was I had to go to university because like I come from like family where like the thought of not going to university, it was never an option. And because I was like the only one that went the creative route, I was balancing this thing in me where I was like, I love this creativity side where I was, creating my like digital art, but I still loved I did a lot of maths in high school and like that logical side. So I was struggling to pick what to decide on. And I actually found this double degree at Swinburne. They did a communications design, which is graphic design, and a business degree. And so it was a double degree. So it was 4 years instead of 3. But like I look back at the time, what was I doing? I was like meeting a lot of people, partying and, doing all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But just being exposed to that like creativity side. Like I really loved my university. To be fair, I don't think that I can apply much of what I learned at university, but like very technically, but that creativity side of university, I really miss. Like, I remember we were like making videos out of dirt from like the playground, and like you had to make like a stop motion video and just like stuff like that we never get to do anymore. But I actually feel like we should find ways to apply that still in our work today.
Mm-hmm.
So I look back and I'm like, that was really fond memories. And I mean, and that opened me up to going on a semester abroad and, finding my way in UX. But if I had to do anything again today, it's so amazing that like now there are actually UX university courses.
Right.
I was blown away when I found that out like a few months ago, that like I found that some universities are now running it, because I was really, really feeling like I needed that in my degree when I started to figure out that's what I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
So it's exciting to see it just become more accessible.
Definitely. And you're right. I feel like a lot of the people who find themselves in UX, they really do have the perfect blend of like wanting to be quite logical, married with the creativity. And UX just seems like a perfect blend of that, because it's, data-driven design at the end of the day. So yeah it is a good blend of that. Was there a particular catalyst or a particular event that made you really interested in getting into tech or getting into UX? Like what kind of, started that?
I think it's a balance of me. I've always, and maybe I was studying business, but like I just love like reading like how businesses decide to make decisions. And like I always would read like business fails, like what's going on and like why did they like tank for a certain reason. Specifically right now, I am very much following the stuff that's going on with Threads and Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah.
Like I'm reading all about it, and I'm reading about like why Elon Musk, like, like how he's been reacting to it. And if you can see right now, like Twitter is like going down in a way right now because of what's happening with Threads. Stuff like that always interested me. And so I didn't realize until I actually started to get into UX that UX is such a big part in how a business is run.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes back to like my time when I was in San Francisco, that semester abroad. I was just meeting a lot of people, and a lot of people were kind of getting into, like, there were a lot of startups or people that just had their business ideas, and they always needed like a UX designer. And I was like I would talk to like one guy that was running a business, and it was just him by himself, and he wanted a UX designer. And I didn't realize, I was like, why? We just like push the pixels. Like, like we can make a website look pretty. And they were like, no, like I need you to like think about the users and like what my business can actually do. And so that's when I realized that, whoa, like UX design is way bigger than just like pushing pixels. We can define the strategy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that really like was like the light bulb moment.
Yeah, I think that's so important to highlight that, even now there's still so much value placed on design in, places like those tech hubs like Silicon Valley. I know in like Berlin, London, there's their UX culture is so strong and so much priority is placed on that position. So it's really interesting to like hear that that's kind of what got you into it, like realizing how much importance it could have on a platform.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice would you give to someone, perhaps someone who is in a similar position to you where they're wanting to get into tech or get into UX? Is there any pathways that you'd recommend or any advice that you'd give?
Yeah, it's a tough one, but an exciting one. Before I go into the advice, I'll tell you like how I felt when I was first starting out in the industry. As I've said, when I moved to San Francisco, I just finished university. I had no UX full-time jobs at all. My portfolio was just made up of like random internships that I tweaked into UX.
Mhm.
So portfolio was kind of just like made up.
Which is fine, by the way.
Yeah.
I would love more people to, like, literally just make up their own projects
Just make
and
it up.
just yeah,
Yeah.
like, portfolio should, like, show your skill, and it doesn't have to be real. Like, it could just
Yeah. Really like touch on or like tweak it like
yeah,
into what you would have done. That's
exactly.
also another thing
Yeah, it
that I would
doesn't
have
have
loved
to
to
be,
see.
like, a proper company, or it could just be, like, ask your grandma about, like, "Give me a name of, like, some, like, travel company, and I'll make them a website." Like, it could
Yeah.
literally just be that.
That's
I was
right.
like,
I
that's so
actually
fun.
you reminded me. I asked my mum, my mum and my aunties, they were my user segments for something.
Yeah,
I can't
use
even remember
family
what it was
for
back then.
research. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, just,
Yep.
like, utilize the things around you. Sorry, I digress. Please continue.
No, but I could talk about portfolios forever. But I had 3 months to get a job before I got kicked out, like, before I needed to get sponsored for a visa.
Right.
So, there was a timeline. So, I really feel when designers are, like, hustling right now because, like, that's what I had to do. I had a spreadsheet, and I'm sure that's what a lot of people are doing right now. Spreadsheet and just, like, a list of companies, and you're
Mhm.
going down the list and tackling them and checking the statuses. That was my full-time job, and, I really feel that, like, what really helped me and the advice that I would give to the designers in that situation is just don't be afraid to annoy people and slide into their DMs.
Mhm.
I get some people messaging me on LinkedIn, but back in the day, I was sending like 20 people emails and and LinkedIn messages, and I was finding their work emails. So say I wanted to apply for a job, I would find their work email and then I would send them a personalized work email. I've been hiring at OpenTable for a while and I see designers do different things. Some of them will just like apply online. Some of them will reach out to me on LinkedIn. Some of them will email me directly, or some will go through like my coworkers and then come towards me. And I fully respect the hustle. And so if you are going to send me a personalized email or LinkedIn message, I will see it. I am busy, but I won't respond right away. I think
Mhm.
people get so bogged down when they don't get a reply from someone. But just be patient. And, if you send like 50 emails to 50 people, you'll get one response. And even if it's just for coffee, but it does take time. And I just think keep reaching out. Like, I think there's a lot of people in my position that want to help out. And so
Mhm.
something will stick.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, the thing that it is really hard when you're a student or when you're just starting out because you feel like you need to know everything, and like the pressure, the imposter syndrome is so
Yes.
big where you just don't want to reach out to those leaders because it just
Yeah.
feels so intimidating. But one thing that I've like really realized with having this podcast and also just in general, people like to help. Like, people wanna
Yeah.
talk about their experience and they wanna lend a hand, and yes, you might not have the time to get back to them straight away, but as a newbie in the industry, what's the worst that can happen with you sending out this email
Yes.
or this LinkedIn message? Like, the worst thing that they can do is say no,
Yeah.
or they're not gonna write back. You're not gonna it's fine, and
Yeah.
they're gonna you're right, everyone just respects the hustle and, you're trying to do what you gotta do. So, yeah, I love that. Keep up
Exactly.
the hustle.
And, like, I still do that personally. So, when I transitioned into management a few years ago, I was like, "I have no idea what I'm doing." I was just overwhelmed with everything. It was basically a completely new job position.
Mhm.
And so I just went on LinkedIn, saw the people that I was really inspired by and sent them all messages. I think I sent like probably like 10 LinkedIn messages to different managers.
Mhm.
And I got a few calls and I basically just met with them. Then I kept an ongoing relationship with a few of them. It's been great. ADP list is a huge, now we've got that. Like you
Mhm.
can just go on that
Yeah.
website and you don't even need to ask anymore.
Mhm. You've got, like, a list of people who are willing and ready to help. I love yeah, I'm a huge advocate for that.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that you brought in, like, how you transitioned into management and having that mentorship. What was the biggest challenge with you transitioning from, just being a designer and on the tools all the time to like then moving into like the management side of things?
Yeah, it was. I'm not gonna lie. Like the first 6 months was a roller coaster of, identity. I had like identity crisis because
Mhm.
I was always like a designer. I love my craft, and now I'm no longer on the tools anymore. How do I define success? How do I like make sure that like I'm helping my team? And so it was, I would say what helped me was really talking to like all the different types of leaders, reading a lot. I read a lot of books
Mhm.
that I can always recommend around leadership. But I feel like for me, the challenges were not being on the tools because, and what is a productive day? A normal productive day of a designer is like, I just did these great user flows. And for me, a productive day would mean I've had like 3 one-on-ones with my direct reports and I feel like they're on the right track,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, you're
So it's
right.
just
Like
changing that mindset.
that daily schedule and that like, yeah, the checklist changes a lot. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, and that's great that you were like you knew to surround yourself with people that could help you in that moment. That's something that people at every stage of their career can find huge value in, not just people who are, you know, beginning to get into design or to tech. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, I guess touching on that, have you had any speed bumps or anything that you can think of that's come up with you in your career, challenges that you feel like has shaped your career and what it looks like right now?
Yeah. I would say there's a few, but the one that like I always come back to is one of the skills that I've had to like really focus in on and grow throughout the years is stop being a people pleaser.
I think we could all do that.
I think we could all do that, especially there's like definitely like catered to certain people, especially certain women, with different backgrounds. But naturally, I straight up like I am a people pleaser. I sometimes call myself a recovering people pleaser because I'm really trying in my personal life, but in my work life, I saw it happen the most. Like there was a while ago, I was a senior product designer at OpenTable, and I just got promoted, and I was really praised for like helping out. Like that was my like position at the company. I could always like help a helping hand, but I remember I was like wanting to get to the next level. So I was like senior. I wanted to get to lead. So because I was praised in the past for helping out, I was like, all right, I'm just going to continue on in this route. I was just doing way too much. I
Mhm.
was helping out in design systems. I was helping out marketing with like asset material. I was like staying late nights to do all of that work where I should have been doing my own work. And then I just would get really overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And then I actually specifically remember my manager at the time, who is still one of my biggest inspirations, Leslie Yang. She really like always helped me out in leadership as well. She was like, how are you scaling yourself? Like, how are you prioritizing your work? It looks like you're just not being able to really say no to anything. And that like kind of switched the gears for me to realize that, well, actually, if I start saying no to people and push back and prioritize my time, that is me proving my worth. And actually, that's going to take me to the next level.
Mhm.
I think that always reminds me of that.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can all learn from, and you're so right. When you're growing and when you're starting off in the industry, everyone really values the hard work and the hustle and the
Yeah.
helping out, where you're right, when you start to get more into, like, that leadership frame of mind, you do have to prioritize your time, and also, like, just being able to say no to things is so hard. That's a skill that,
Yeah.
like, it's like a muscle that you need to, like, work out consistently so that you
Yes.
can do the scaling that you need to do as a person and as a designer.
Yes.
And, yeah, it happens quite a lot where it takes a manager to step in and be like, what are you doing?"
Yeah, exactly.
You need
Like,
to
is
stop
that
this."
the what I always like remind myself is when you look at the leadership, the leaders that we work with or even outside in the world,
Mhm,
they're not doing everything. They have comfortably said no to things. How have they gotten to that position? So that's kind of like the, okay, I got to put that hat on
mhm,
and comfortably say no.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's a lesson that a lot of us can learn.
Yes.
on the topic of like, burnout and
Oh yeah.
work-life balance, is there anything that you do regularly for like your productivity or like self-care?
So other than drinking a lot, no, I'm kidding.
Water, I'm sure.
Yeah, drinking water. Yeah, exactly. And eating at restaurants. I'm very particular now with my work boundaries. So I do work a little bit like crazy hours because I'm working American time zones.
Yeah.
So I block off on my calendar like a big break, like after my morning meetings. Like I take off like 2 hours just because I've been on calls like since like 6 or 7 a.m. And so that's like that works for me if different people have different schedules, but just like putting that in your calendar and like or putting down like focus time, or I am literally like no meetings but can slack, like really setting those work boundaries has helped me. And it's
Mhm.
helped, I've seen that like help other people as well. And that is actually it's very similar to the previous thing about like saying no, just
Mhm.
saying no in a different way.
And I think that helps out your team as well. Like when you
Mhm.
are able to communicate what you're willing to take on and not take on in that moment, it makes them feel a lot more comfortable in whether or not they ask you for help at a certain time or yeah.
Yes.
So no, that's great. I might have to take some of that advice as well and block off some of my calendar. So, you mentioned that, you love to take advantage of Open Table and being within that atmosphere. So you like to eat out a lot. Is there anything else that, like, takes up your spare time?
When I'm so work as a lot of designers probably feel, we're on our laptops all the time,
Mhm.
but we're such like a lot of us are like people, like especially managers, but designers, like we are so empathetic of our users. So I just feel like as I meet more designers, that connection with people is so strong.
Mhm.
That's why when I'm not working, I'm not on my laptop. I used to be back in the day when I was a design, like when I was like earlier in my career, I just loved like designing on the side. And like, I guess I still do, but now I really respect the like when I'm working on my laptop. When I'm not, I'm not. So I am outside, like, yeah, obviously like going to restaurants, seeing friends. Another thing that I do is I like to switch my brain off completely because work is quite intense and like just like go hardcore and guilty pleasures. Like TV shows. That's right, TV show guilty pleasures,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
Bad reality TV is
Yeah.
my kryptonite. So, yes, I totally understand that when, a lot of my job as well is around
Yeah.
people asking lots of questions, really driving conversations, and I love it. But at the same time, sometimes when you wanna switch off, you just wanna switch on something really, really cringy and zone out. Love that. Other than bad TV, do you have, like, any content that you listen to, like podcasts or books or anything like that? Or are you more into, like, socializing and that kind of thing?
I do like to read, especially for me when it's around like work challenges or something that's really interested when I'm like transitioning at work or I'm facing a problem.
Mhm.
So I can like for me, anyone that's interested in management, and you don't need to be at all like ready for that in your career, but if that's on your horizon, Julie Aju's Making of a Manager book is,
Mhm.
everyone mentions it, but it truly is, it's a great eye opener into like the world of how she grew the design team at Facebook,
Mhm.
but then also the challenges that like you may face. And so that's kind of like always at my desk right there. Another book that I always go back to is Lara Hogan's Resilience Management. Just touches on the soft skills that like you may need. And being is hard. You deal with a lot of like technical situations and emotions. So
Mhm.
going back to that foundation is really helpful.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that even if it's not a situation that you're in at the moment, you can still get
Yeah,
great value out of those books. Yeah, I recently just read Radical Candor, or I listened to the
love
audiobook,
that book.
and I just found that, like, a lot of it was what I would consider a lot of Silicon Valley lingo and a few buzzwords chucked in there for good measure. But at the same time, there's like a lot of value that you can get out of those leadership books just as a
Yes.
good team member, and helps you out not only in your work relationships but also just in your relationships in general.
Absolutely. That book I read, I still remember I was like I think I was just product designer level at that point. And I remember because the book is so written based for managers, but that inspired us. We even did that book as a design club reading book.
Yeah, yeah.
And we practiced how to give feedback. Like that is just so important.
Definitely. And it's such a skill that no one actually teaches you. Like you either have it or you don't, but it's something that you can learn. That's great. Is that with like a book club in Open Table?
Yeah, we used to do.
Cool.
We need to spin that back up again. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, and that was the first book that we did.
Oh, cool. Oh, nice. Oh, that's such a good idea. I guess you did mention as well one of your past managers who you really found super influential. Is there any other business leaders or mentors that you have that inspire you?
Yeah, I would say I always look at my leadership that I work with currently in my position, and I'm always inspired. Open Table has a lot of great women leaders. As I said, my past manager, Leslie Yang, she moved on to Lyft. But even my current managers, they're really strong, strong women leaders. And I think for me particularly, I love any gendered leaders, but for me, I really relate to women that are fighting gender equality and really pushing diversity in different ways. I mentioned Julie Zhu, her book. She worked with Mark and everyone at that specific time where there wasn't really many women, and what she did with Facebook and the design team is so inspiring. I always also, on that topic of women business leaders, I see a lot of videos that come up on my Facebook is Indra Nooyi.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
I learned about her in school. So she was the old CEO for Pepsi. And just if you find, even on TikTok, you just find videos, and when she speaks, she's so very methodical and really paced in how she speaks.
Very
And she did
articulate.
so much, very, very articulate. And she did so much for that company. And she was the CEO of Pepsi.
Yeah, like one of the biggest companies in the entire on the globe. Yeah, I love hearing her talk. She's just she's one of those people where you just look at her and I'm like, you are so much smarter than me.
Yeah. I want to know how did she grow? Or I think she was also born like that. There are quotes that she said, just comes natural to her.
Oh, love that. And I think as well, seeing women and people from minority backgrounds in leadership positions, that representation is so important. And was there a particular time that you've thought maybe you wouldn't be in this position and those people were helping you out?
Yeah, well, I think my past manager, I guess there was a period of time I was like, there's no way I would see myself in leadership. I just love the craft. I was a product designer, and she was so inspiring. I watched her transition from designer to manager. And then I guess she just did a little bit of nudges, and I practiced by mentoring. I was just a senior designer mentoring. And then once you start mentoring, you're actually flipping your mindset a bit versus I can now teach people versus being the student. And once I started mentoring, and then slowly over time, I was like, oh, you know what? I can do this. It's just confidence.
Yeah, I mean, that could be potentially some really great advice to give for someone who's not 100% sure if they want to go into a leadership position. Maybe take on a newbie under your wing.
Yeah.
Either formally or informally at work, or, just in general, and see if that experience lights you up and see if you find any value in it. Cool. Okay. Well, I think I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because it's a question that I like to end the podcast on. If you could give your younger self any career advice, what would it be?
Yeah. So I think, and design is such an interesting role. We have a great community where that we're in, but it also can be really isolating. And because it's isolating, and maybe this is my experience, it can be also competitive because you are literally judged sometimes with the designs that you've got. And so for me, I would tell myself, stop comparing yourself to other designers and stop trying to compete. I was always worried, am I staying too long at a company? Been at Open Table for 6 years. How is that going to look on my resume? Or if I'm not, designing fast enough, or have I moved into management too quickly? Like, I don't know. I just get into like some thoughts, like doubts in my mind. And I look at other people. I'm very inspired by other people. And I'm like, oh, they went the right track. I should have done that in my career. And I'm like, oh my God, who cares? Like there is no right career. And you could go backwards, you could go forwards, like you could spend like 10 years at a company. As long as you're growing and showing that like you are challenging yourself and, you know, producing great work and you're loving what you do, whatever, that should be the main thing. Maybe because I just turned 30, so like I don't really care anymore.
Hey, well, that's a bit of a flex that you've done all of this by the time that you're 30. Well done, you. But yeah, I feel like that's such important advice for people to have, especially in design. You're 100% right that it's very competitive, but like quietly competitive.
Yeah, it's quietly. Yeah.
Because everyone is kind of aware of everyone's output, but like a lot of it is digital. A lot of it is on social media. A lot of it is like people don't see the day-to-day grind. You only see the finished product most of the time. So I think it's really interesting to hear like your side in that, you know, the hustle is there and you found that as long as you're enjoying it and like finding value in your current spot, then hell yeah, keep going.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I really, really enjoyed having this chat and I learnt so much. Thank you again for joining.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed it too and learnt as well.